All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to zoom in on Upper Lake Mary on our TEISS map. So we're going to select the zoom in button. I'm going to click and drag a little area right here where I know to be Upper Lake Mary. And this one right in here is Upper Lake Mary. I'd like to demonstrate one really cool feature of some shapefiles is that they have labels associated with them. So if we click on the Labels tab in TEISS, and then we double-click on the shapefile that you imported, we can see that there's a label by attribute section here. And we can click on the down arrow button in the attribute field to view the different labels that are available. So we can see that there's lots of them. What I first want to do is show you the link name. So I'm going to click on link name and click OK. All right, we'll notice that nothing happened, and that's because the checkbox next to the shapefile name does not have a check in it. So let's make sure that that's checked and see what happens then. Oh, cool. So now we've got our names. So here is the Upper Lake Mary right here. And let's play around with some of the other labels. So let's go back into that by double-clicking on it. We're going to change it to perimeter. And the reason I'm going to change it to perimeter is because that's going to give us the shoreline distance. So let's see if we can get a shoreline distance for Upper Lake Mary by changing this to perimeter. And click OK. This shows us that Upper Lake Mary has a shoreline distance of approximately 21,182.5. However, if you'll notice something is that there's no units associated with it, so that really doesn't tell me anything. So I've got to do some investigation into what this is telling me. So sometimes if you look at the metadata file, you can find the units of the attributes. So let's take a look at that metadata file again. And I'm going to scroll back up here. And in the entity and attribute information, it shows us the different units for these different attributes. So let's see if we can find perimeter. And it tells us perimeter of the feature in internal units. Well, I'm not exactly sure what the internal units are. I'm assuming because the planar distance units are reported in meters, that the internal units are in meters, but I'm not entirely sure of that. So I'm going to confirm that we're really using units of meters by using the measure distance and area tools in TEISS. So I'm going to go back into TEISS. What I could do is measure the entire shoreline distance of Upper Lake Mary, but using the measure distance and area tools, that's going to take a while just because there's so many curves and different things on this lake. So I'm going to do a smaller lake just to see if I can confirm that these units are in meters. So I'm going to zoom in on one of these smaller lakes. First I'm going to zoom out and find a smaller lake that I want to work with. And then I'm going to zoom in on that lake. So I'm going to use this tiny lake here that's only 828 perimeter. And I'm going to use the measure distance and area tools to see what kind of perimeter value I measure. So I'm going to zoom in on it. I'm going to get as close as I can here. And then I'm going to use measure distance and areas tools, which looks like a little ruler. And I'm just going to roughly estimate it by clicking on each of these points and just mousing. So this is a new point, so I'll left click on my mouse here and left click there. And I don't have to be very exact because I'm just doing an estimate. So you just want to keep measuring until you go all the way around the lake. And this is going to connect that first dot. And then we can see on the very bottom of our screen the perimeter that I measured with the measure distance and area tool is 0.52 miles. So let's see if 0.52 miles converts to approximately 828 meters. So we're going to use the tools, we're going to use the unit converter tool and check that out. So we're measuring distance, so we'll check on distance. And we're measuring 0.52 miles. So let's select miles. And let's see how many meters that is. 837. That's pretty close. 828 is pretty close to 837, so that gives me a very confident idea that I'm using, that these values are actually in meters. So by checking this, we've confirmed that the perimeter value of Upper Lake Mary is 21,182.5 meters. So that's the shoreline distance of Upper Lake Mary. And I want to know how many miles is that? Because meters, that's a lot of meters, and it's easier to work with if it's in units of miles. So let's convert that. So we'll enter 21,182.5 in meters. And how many miles is that? Okay, so that's approximately 13 miles. So we'll record that in our notes and in our logbook. And now what we're going to do is close this out. And I'm going to do a search on the internet, or I did a search on the internet, and determined that there is one other lake that's not on the reservation, but it's in Coconino County, that allows motorized boats, and that's Lake Powell. And on the website, it reported a shoreline distance, so I don't have to use my shapefile to determine that, since it's already reported on that website. And that is 1986 miles. So that lake is huge compared to Upper Lake Mary. So I'm going to log that into my notes and my logbook. And that means that the total shoreline distance of lakes in Coconino County is 1,999 miles. So that's the sum of Upper Lake Mary and this Lake Powell. So there's only 13 miles of shoreline on the reservation. So the ratio would be 13 divided by 1999. And I get out my little calculator and I enter that into my calculator. You can also use Excel if you want to store it in Excel, but that value is 0.0065. So that's my ratio value that I would use to calculate my reservation level emissions for these recreational marine vessels.